You should be building the games as a dev that are interesting to you, but using this discovery marketing to find out that there are people there. Because if you look at the best-selling games of all time, none of them appeal to everyone. People want to discover, but not everyone wants to go on an adventure to discover everything.
Hey, welcome to Brain Arcade, Stephan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Chris?
Good, man. Thanks for coming on. This is Stephan Bugaj.
Yes. Hey, I'm Stephan Bugaj. I have been in the gaming and entertainment industry for a long time, having been at places like Pixar, Telltale Games, and most recently Genvid Entertainment, where I won an Emmy Award for our Silent Hill Ascension project. And right now I am currently in the process of delving deep into generative AI. I actually have an AI background from when I was the personality designer for the Sophia Android and before. And so, yeah, I do a lot of different things in gaming and entertainment, particularly at the crossroads of technology and innovation and how that applies to creative and business.
Awesome. So you and I met at Genvid, where we worked on various projects together. And I think that's where I realized I was like, oh, I really like talking to Stephan because like you've got a similar viewpoint, but a different background. So I always get an interesting like angles on stuff. And like, it's nice to be able to talk to somebody and talk at the really high meta level, which is where we'll be today because, you know, it's not zeitgeist quite, but it sort of sits, it sits underneath zeitgeist and sort of above regular industry concerns. And, you know, generally most of your day-to-day conversations are like, wrapped up in how do we ship this thing? Oh my God, everything's on fire. And, you know, like how much runway do we have?
Totally.
Right. And so one of the things that I've noticed, you know, and this is true going on probably the last 4 or 5 years, but it's really, really relevant now is we're saturated with entertainment right now, and pulling in your AI background, I think, is where our conversation goes today, which is like, hey, let's talk a little bit about solving the billion-dollar question of discoverability and possible ways to attack that, because I think it's not as easy as just putting together like search tags and things like that. I think it's really about like trying to understand the whole space. I don't know. What are your thoughts on entertainment discoverability?
I agree. I think we are currently deluged with, like you said, 300 channels, but in some ways, infinity channels and nothing to watch. The strongest vector for people finding anything right now is word of mouth, but word of mouth has its limitations, and one of which is if you're the content creator, it's very hard for you to control. You have to get in front of the people who will talk about you before they can give you word of mouth boosts. And so it's like, how do you get there? How do you get in front of them in the first place? And then how do you amplify whatever publicity, whatever attention, whatever interest that you're getting in a positive way? And I do think that with so much entertainment, it becomes really almost impossible to reach your audience if you don't define them fairly precisely and figure out how to get to them.
Totally. And in fact, you know, I think a good example of this, and I know that they've made plenty of money since launch, you know, but to me, I had been seeing the failing of traditional marketing, where basically where like in the old days, you built it and then you figured out how to market it. Right. And we did a lot more risky stuff, and we did things that were like, who knows, like we can go get stuff. And, you know, like marketing data was pretty good. You could figure out how many sales you were going to have based off pre-sales, and you can flood the channel with broadcast and ad buys and all that other stuff and sort of make up for things. But the total addressable market was smaller. And also we weren't inundated anymore. But like, I think there's a few different topics here, which is like the failing of marketing, right? Of like how marketing is changing right now, which just adds to the confusion of discoverability.
Totally.
The flooding of like saturating the market with product, like how much stuff there is out there, but that's partially due to the barrier of entry being way lower than it used to be. You know, and then there's the idea of like word of mouth and what does that mean in the digital age, because it's like community is actually where we're at, right? So my current operating theory is like traditional marketing is dead. Build it and they will come is no longer valid. We now have to figure out, find your community and take them along for the ride before you even get to alpha.
Absolutely. So, like, just to give sort of historical context to the audience who may or may not know, back in ancient times,
Yeah. The 90s.
when people were shorter and lived by the water,
Yeah, right.
the barriers to entry were sufficiently high that pretty direct, straightforward marketing played out against the distribution model in the following way. You had to be able to get your boxes on shelves. So once you were able to get over the hurdle of getting a distributor who could place your boxes on shelves, then you were fighting for the most primo spaces on the shelves. And as that turned into print catalogs and then online catalogs, the front pages. But you had to have someone put your boxes in the stores. And once you got over that hurdle, then you were advertising and people were able to purchase your product because it was in the stores.
Right.
And you were just telling them, here's what it's about. And if it's good, they're going to buy it because there were so few games that the way
Yeah.
that you could do your easy market analysis was how many people own this device. And a
Right.
pretty good percentage of them are going to want to buy this because there's nothing else out there.
Right.
And
And
so,
then even Metacritic was an indicator, right? Because if you were like over a certain percentage, by the way, I think the missing part of people understanding Metacritic is it actually wasn't really about the score. I think that the Metacritic score actually determined how much word of mouth you got. Like some people directly purchased off of Metacritic, but it was more like, oh man, it's got a 69. I'm gonna go talk to Jeff and see if Jeff, like, Jeff, did you get this? Right? Like,
right, totally.
if it was a 40%, you wouldn't even bother talking to your buddy Jeff.
Right. And if it was over 90, you'd just go buy it.
Right. Right.
And then talk about it.
Right.
But yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's like when there were fewer games, it was in a sense you could still have flops. The industry is littered with the corpses of companies that put out games that didn't satisfy the players in one way or another. Were too early, too late for some trend. Were broken to the point where people just gave up on them and told all their friends not to buy it. But if you made a good game that was on trend and wasn't broken, you had a pretty good idea of roughly how many of them you were going to sell, and you could budget accordingly.
Right. And also margins were smaller. It took smaller teams to make games back then. So you could hit your margin. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're here to talk about discoverability, but
yeah,
budgeting is a whole other thing.
So yeah, so here's an interesting data point for like, and this, I learned this when I was at EA. So part of EA's success in the early days, all the way up until digital distribution, was the fact that they used Madden and FIFA as a cudgel, right? And they could put stuff like, Dante's Inferno. It's an okay game. It's not amazing, but it was pretty good. But because they could hype the hell out of it with marketing and also strong arm electronics boutique into featuring it on an end cap, right? Because like the most important real estate in games was a 1/4 inch by 6 inches, and it was right up front next to the register, right? And it was like the physical location of how you purchase things back then was just as important. It was part of the reason why like Ultima put that cloth map in their box, because when you picked it up, it felt heavier. Blizzard did the same with notepads, right? These were all physical marketing tactics of like giving you the feeling of quality. And so the whole business shifted though once we got to digital distribution, which leads us up to here. Now I'll fast forward because I'm going to get to like one of the things that made me start thinking about traditional marketing being dead for games was the fact that Spider-Man came out or Miles Morales 2 came out, and on day one on paper, it hadn't recouped. Right. And by recoup, I mean, it didn't make back its budget. And
right.
So like, and they weren't that short. They were short by a little bit, but it was, I'm sure, like a canary in a gold mine for a lot of people, because they were like, holy smoke, you can't drive through LA without seeing a Miles Morales like billboard every 1/4 mile. Right. And you couldn't browse the web. Oh man, that's how old I am. You couldn't browse the web, without seeing ads being fed to you about Miles Morales. And the thing is it at the time there were 55 million PlayStation 5s, and it sold something like 6 point something, which is respectable, but not what they needed to do on paper, right?
Right.
And So there's like my other footnote there is like, it's going to make a bunch in lifetime. So they actually, it's not bad numbers, but it got a bunch of press for not selling enough. Right.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the whole budget versus market size issue. And
Mhm.
the biggest game companies are in this war with themselves where they have promised themselves such huge upsides that they are budgeting for huge upsides, and when they don't get them,
Right.
bang, big huge problem. And
Right.
that's
And it's,
that's not so much a discoverability issue because it's pretty hard not to discover the Miles Morales
it,
game.
this is true, but it's also part of that, like right sizing their budget was they essentially would just like back up the truck for marketing, right? Like Grand Theft Auto 5 had a $500 million budget, but I think they spent at least 500 million in marketing.
Right.
Right. And so, like, let's move away from there and go to like, well, what's our current state of affairs? We're getting flooded with, there's no mid-sized games anymore. It's going to be Grand Theft Auto 6 next year and nothing else. It's going to be like service games like Fortnite, Roblox, etc. And then maybe people still playing Helldivers 2, right? Like it's going to be these little sort of pockets, and then it's going to be all indie. Like the floodgates are open because a lot of people got laid off. They're going to start making indie games, and we're going to start getting hit with them. Well, actually, we're already getting hit with a lot of indie games. So, the reason I brought up all that marketing stuff was basically I'm eliminating that as a potential. Like,
Right.
not only can the indies not do that kind of marketing, it doesn't even work anymore. So you don't even have that as an excuse, like as a, not even an excuse, but just as a reasoning for how to go to market. So we have to rethink the problem from a dev standpoint of how do I get discovered? How do I get this to my audience that are, might like, something like a Silk Song or, Vampire Survivors, or actually, I just had Arthur on recently. We were talking about indie darlings like Balatro and Vampire Survivors, etc. Because he and I had a conversation about it. But like, so discoverability. What else? What do I do as an indie, Stephan?
Well, so like you said earlier, Chris, it all comes down to community. That's where we're at now, right? Like what did Vampire Survivors in particular do very well? But also on the higher scale, Larian with Baldur's Gate 3
Mm,
was they reached out to the community early and often,
yeah.
and they made their player base, their core player base, feel heard and cared about, and like they were participating in a community with the devs. And over time, those people brought in more people. So there's your word of mouth because they want to play with their friends. And
Right.
even if it's not a multiplayer game, they want to compare notes with their friends. They want to say, hey, fellow Vampire Survivors plan, how did you clear this level?
Right.
And in the case of a multiplayer game, they actually want to play with their friends, like online simultaneously, so they will bring them in. But building that community was key. And I think we see that lately over and over again. Cult of the Lamb is amazing at this. And I think Cult of the Lamb is like a good example of the high end of
Yeah.
indie marketing community building. Not necessarily in terms of budget, but some of the stuff they do is not cheap. Things like having a Cult of the Lamb themed rave. Talk about building community, right?
Yeah.
You're all there in person, in real life, doing something together. And it's not just your typical, hey, we're going to have a Discord server and sell you t-shirts. It's thinking about like, what is your community excited about? Who are they and what are they excited about? And what can you do to engage them around that excitement?
Right.
And to Cult of the Lamb players, the theming was a lot of it. So they just theme a whole bunch of stuff around that style, right? The style
Mm-hmm.
that they have, the IP that they have, and they can go to town with that, and it pays big dividends because it's also authentic, right? Like the last thing you want to do is don't want to be the company that's the Steve Buscemi. How do you do, fellow kids of companies?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Well,
Um,
by the way, I actually think the death of marketing is a good thing. So when late 90s, early 2000s, when graphic fidelity in games was still pretty blocky, or not blocky, but it was a lot simpler than it is now. But then you would get a fully rendered CGI quality commercial on broadcast for your game. And it's like, and I remember going at that time and saying, this looks nothing like our game. And they'd be like, yeah, it's fine, right? And then you're like, yeah, but aren't we worried about promising something that we're not going to deliver? It's like, no, it's about the vibes or it's about the feeling, and I was like, this goes against my sort of neurodivergent need for like exact definition. You know what I mean?
It also goes against a lot of what the audience wants, because like they do want
Yeah.
vibes, they do
Yeah.
want fun and community now. Like that's things that they're looking for. But the lack of authenticity is the difference between making a commercial that lies
Hmm.
about what the game looks and feels like, and
Right.
having events and ancillaries that expand that feeling, that vibe out into the world, whether it's a actually cool Discord server or a rave, or putting out publishing things like comic books and little mini films and stuff like that, things that get your audience excited about what you're doing because they want to be a part of that world.
Right. And, it's interesting because, what I pulled out from all of that is like creating evangelists of your audience because they're spreading the vibe, not perfect CGI characters. Right.
Yeah.
It's basically this transmission of emotion or feeling, which is what we're in the business of doing anyway. And so we're essentially giving people license to pass along that feeling. And so, like, I think if we're doing correctly by making a game to elicit certain emotions and feelings, then our marketing slash outreach or community should be based on the same emotional pillars, right? So that it's then easily transmitted via the community to somebody else. So I think I hadn't actually put it in those words until now, but that seems like it's one of those things that, like, I know between you and I, it's like, well, yeah, that's a no brainer. That's the way it's supposed to work, right?
Well, I mean, it's also the answer to people like, how do you make something go viral? Well, who knows? But the only way that it's going to go viral is if it's easily transmissible. And for it to
Yes.
be easily transmissible, it has to be clear,
Right.
memorable, hooky, right? Like it has
Yep.
to be things that people can quickly transmit to other people, because ain't no one catching a virus by hanging around for 6 hours, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, but the other thing is, I think clear, hooky, and I think it's interesting to watch social media because it's a little blunt in its communication and what it's going for, and they're going for like the big emotions, like sad, comedy or joy or laughter, right? And then there's informational social media, but even those are playing into formulas of like hitting those emotions. And I think that feeling of belonging is what you want to bring to your community, but you also want to pass along like the main vibe of what you're doing, which is like, is it a fun time? Is it happy? Is it a comedy? Is it sad? Or is there pathos? Like that has to come through in everything that you're working on, not just pretty pictures, right?
and
So
I think part of the problem, there's two problems with if you build it, they will come. One is
yeah.
no, because there's too much it, right? Like
Hmm.
video games at this point are like housing in China, right? The Chinese have whole
Yeah.
cities sitting empty because they were just like, people need houses, let's just keep building. And then one day they were
Right.
like, huh, what are these like 5 extra cities that we've got lying around?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and video games are like that now, where like there aren't enough players to need over 4,000 games a year.
Yes.
Even if every person on planet Earth played video games every day,
Hmm.
we're getting up to the point where there's more games than would sustain that. And so that's one problem. Like you can't just build it and they will come. And part of the problem with that is there's a lot of people who are building it because they think it will make them money, not because they're trying to find a player base in a community that
Yes.
they also connect with. They're just like, I heard there's gold in them our video game hills. I'm gonna go dig me some video games.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's a big part of the proliferation of not necessarily bad, but kind of soulless games.
Yep.
And then there's also the issue of you have to communicate. You can't just build it and expect people to show up. And a lot of times, the people who are just building it and hoping they will come, the thing that they have communicated is the complexity of how you play the game, because they're designers usually.
Right. 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 Right.
And they
Right.
want to tell you about their awesome design in
Right.
detail and be like, you like games, you're going to love this complex mechanic I designed because it's
Yeah.
really cool.
You're
And
like,
people,
you might as well send a spreadsheet with like 15 tabs and like,
exactly. Whereas people need something simple, even if it's complex.
yes.
I will go
Yeah.
back to
Yeah.
Baldur's
Yeah.
Gate 3. Baldur's
Well,
Gate 3. Long, complicated game. You can
yes.
play multiple characters. There are different layers to the play mechanic. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. But what do people come to Baldur's Gate 3 for? Horny D&D.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I
I
want
would.
I want to I want to kill dragons and get laid.
Right. Adventures, and that's true because I had to say the first thing, I remember Baldur's Gate 3 came out. I was like, oh my god, this game's so amazing, and right behind that was, and you can have sex with everybody, which was kind of a bug, but also maybe something that helped them out. So the other thing, though, I want to back up a little bit because the fast follow thing. I want to throw one example out there of like Vampire Survivors got so hot with the community and went sort of pre-viral before it even came out while it was in early access. And it stayed extra long in early access. Like it stayed in early access long enough that the fast follow copycats hit the market before Vampire Survivors came out of early access. Like the Army of Ruins of the world, and like Army of Ruin. It's a fun little game, but it's clearly a Vampire Survivor clone. Even though it came out like by the dates, it actually hit the market before Vampire Survivors. But I can guarantee that it was made after they found out about it, and then kind of just made a Vampire Survivors clone. So yes, fast follow as a category is, well, you can see it in the app stores, like all the like mobile. How many like tap the screw games do we need? How many
Right,
like
totally.
fill the vial? How many rescue the king from like? Yeah, it's really funny that even the TV broadcast for those now is no more ads, right? We're making you watch this TV now, but there's no ads in the app anymore. And like, we're actually, so that's interesting. Let's talk about backlash right now, because we're in another transition as a society, right? Which is like we're having several backlashes all at the same time, like the rejection of aggregation, right? Like the monolithic Facebook like city state. Like people are like backing off of lots of social media, and social media serves specific functions now, right? And mostly, Instagram is like crappy marketing, but that's what it does. And the other one is like people are finding that they don't really want to be in groups with like 3 billion people. They want to be in a group with 12, right? And so like we're seeing people sort of disappear into groups on Discord, or group chats on their phone, or a WhatsApp group chat, or Telegram. And so that also kills the build it and they will come, because you cannot market to those tight little groups. I mean, you can try, but you can't guarantee that you'll reach or achieve penetration into any of those like small social circles.
Yeah, so there's a few things going on there. So one is there is the discoverability issue, which to be a part of those groups, you have to be authentically a part of those groups.
Right.
Right? That's the hello fellow children issue. Like you can't come in and be like,
yes,
yesterday I was making first person shooters, but now I'm making cozy games, and I
right,
expect you to accept me 24 hours later as being one of you, right? Like,
right.
which is not to say you can't make a transition from the kinds of games that you build. It's just you can't show up day one and be like, I'm one of you based on no previous being part of this community.
Uh-huh. Right.
And no previous interest, right? Like you could show up to a sci-fi community and be like, I don't know you guys, but I've been interested in sci-fi for 30 years. But you can't be like, I was a rom-com fan until this morning when I found out there's money in sci-fi, and now I'm all
Right.
about that, right? So,
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So authenticity matters.
authenticity definitely matters. So the other issues going on here that are somewhat related, which is budgets have gotten very high,
Mm-hmm.
which means that you're trying to market to everyone, which means you have to make something that everyone's interested in. And there
Right.
are not as many of those things as one might hope if one is trying to make things. So you need to be able to understand the size of your potential audience and scope to them.
Yes.
However, the part of the backlash is first one's free kids
Yes.
form of business that we have all gotten entangled in across the entertainment industry, from
Yeah.
streamers to cloud gaming and so on, has created very high expectations for what supposedly is worth $0.
Yes.
And part of the backlash against paying for things means there won't be things.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, so here's where I'm headed. It's not the only path, but as an example, I think it opens up more discussion for us. Is like the need to hit the broadest market possible actually means that you're diluting the art, right? Like it loses all rough edges. It starts to become kind of smooth and polished. And then, it appeals to everybody, but is it actually saying anything of any like emotional weight? Maybe, maybe not. That's not all games, but generally as a process, that's not what's going to get you. It's almost irrelevant to the monetary calculation. But for me, I'm like, oh, I'm getting older. I'm going to start making retirement games. What do I do? How do I make it cost effective? And then how do I make art? Right. And so I'm like, oh, well, first of all, let's descope. I think I can start to build a body of work of 1 to 3 hour games. Right. That basically are no longer, and I have to detrain this because I'm, starting out on PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, your desire was to always make 20 to 40 hour games. Right. And so for me, I'm like, how do I scope things down to like a 1 to 3 hour experience? And so that's going to take some practice for me. But the other thing that I just said that's important was body of work. Once I start doing my retirement stuff, I can start to build a body of work because the proof is in the pudding. And it's not even like first one's free anymore. There's like a meta strategy around all of the games, which is like, hey, you may not like everything, but support the cause. Like, because I'm now making art. So the story is different. It's not, check out my new Metroidvania, except, now it's a rehash of Earthworm Jim, right? Which would make a pretty good Metroidvania. But it's really like, look, I'm going to make quirky shit for the rest of my time on this planet, or until they put my brain in a jar and send me off to space in the Enterprise. Like, in which case I'll still keep making weird games. But to me, that's my personal solution to this saturation, which is I'm going to have to start building a community around the idea that we need to make little artsy fartsy games that, have some edges.
So yeah, I mean, it's building a community. It's finding where those people are and being able to reach them. It's scoping your budgets to be able to make that make sense. It's using platforms, right? Epic just announced that UEFN devs will be able to monetize, so people can start having a little more self-control over making a living on UEFN potentially. Although actually not too bad the way it was. It's just different than what you can do on Roblox, but there's Roblox as well, 77 million DAU, lots of people show up. Don't look down your nose at it as a dev, because there is a community there, and there's a lot of communities there that may be interested in something you're interested in, and you might, a small dev team made Forsaken, which is like, I know it's the hotness in my house.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
The thing is like, there's a lot of platform plays coming down the pipe. Right. And that's the other thing is UGC inside of a platform like Fortnite or Roblox, or like I can probably name like 10 if I sit down and have some quiet time. But
all right, here's the thing. Platforms are big companies trying to make lots of money.
Yep.
And that's what they do.
I think
there's no such thing as UGC. I don't believe there are creators and there are people who just want to play.
Yep.
And the people who create stuff that get played are devs. They might be small devs, but what's the difference between the small team that made Forsaken right now or something like that and epic mega games back in the 80s?
Yes.
There's no difference, right?
None.
And so it's also being part of Discovery is being willing to be a part of the community and not trying to be above it.
Yep, totally.
This episode is brought to you by Battlefield 6. Battlefield 6 is the ultimate all-out warfare experience. Rip through the skies in aerial dogfights. Demolish your surroundings for a strategic advantage. Harness complete control over every action and movement using the kinesthetic combat system. Drop into multiplayer with your squad, or fight furiously as a member of the Dagger 1-3 squad in a gritty, adrenaline-fueled single-player campaign where you'll defend a world on the edge of collapse.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for this day.
By the way, do you remember when we were working on one of our Genvid titles and we were like, dude, we have to have a fashion show. Like one of the 2 games in my whole career that I have envy over is Dress to Impress, right? In Roblox, because it's a freaking fashion show and it's done really well. And it's found its pocket of daily users. It's highly streamable. Like I'm so impressed by that game.
In terms of features that will get discovered, it's not, oh, what is my UGC funnel? And humans don't think like that. No normal kid wakes up each day being like, what's my UGC funnel? That's not a thing they do. They're not, most of them aren't trying to monetize. Most of them don't want some sort of platform play positioning opportunity. Like that's what brands think about, and that's what the like people who become Mr. Beast think about. But normal, average, everyday kids are like, I want cool hats. I want to be able to make my character look exactly what I think is fun and funny, right? Like I want the whatever, the goofy gun that shoots silly string or whatever.
I think it's even simpler than that. I think it's, I want to look cool to my friends is one drive. I want to look like how I feel. It's a different one, right? And it's like they're super simple as far as that stuff goes. I want to play the game the way I want to play it.
Yeah.
Right? Like it comes down to super simple, like, you know, 8-year-olds playing freeze tag. It's like the rules really devolve to that.
And it's also like, if you look at things that can get really good traction too, there's a really crass way to look at collectability, which we've seen over and over again fairly recently. And then there's what Pokemon or Magic did, where like the collectability is just cool. You're like, it is cool to have more Pokemon. It is cool to have these cards because it makes things interesting and different. And you see that again, like I will keep bringing up Forsaken because my youngest is playing it like crazy right now, and they are obsessed with collecting all of the characters because it makes the game more fun, and they want to be able to level up all of their killers and all of their survivors and collect them all and try to get them all top level, not because they're trying to open some more loot boxes or they want to get the diamond achievement or anything like that, because it's more fun because things are interesting by doing that. Like it makes the game more interesting and deep through the mechanic of through the collection mechanic than just simply here's some extra stuff for no good reason. And obviously you in North America you have to try to avoid pay to win when you're doing that sort of thing. But it is a thing people will talk about. Like if you're trying to get that word of mouth, having a cool reason to keep coming back and keep adding new stuff is something the kids will talk about.
Absolutely. And in fact, it's just that base appeal that you have to hit and you have to build the mechanism for it. And like, you're right. I want to circle back to something you said. UGC actually doesn't exist. It's not user generated content, mainly because you can only make what the provider of the pieces allows you to make. Even though Roblox has its own engine and you can bring your own assets in, they're still in control of what goes onto their platform, albeit they're not really great at monitoring, you know, lewd or predatory stuff. However, they're technically in control of that. So those devs can do their own thing. So, okay, we've still got some time left. I think it's time to transition. So discoverability is an issue. We're being saturated. There's lots of different ways that people are going to interact with their community and, you know, the way that they experience or get word of mouth inside these other, you know, sort of platforms or smaller communities. How do we actually solve discoverability then? Like, do we need to define, I think there are multiple solutions, by the way. So we might need to define who we're solving discoverability for. Like, is it for a small developer? Is it for the user? Is it like who, like, I think there's multiple customers, but I think you and I first should talk about like, okay, for us to have a successful discussion about solving discoverability, we need to actually first define what the endpoints are going to be, right? And so I'm interested in games. I think it should be a game discovery endeavor, but probably not to exclude, but not focused on AAA or AA, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. The way for AAA to get discovered is they, run a Super Bowl ad. I don't know, like paint the sky the color of your whatever,
Yeah,
right? Like
totally.
you have so much money, it's kind of hard not to get noticed.
Run a co-promotion in Fortnite. Like pay 100,000 streamers to play their game in one night.
Exactly.
Like it's just Battlefield 6 is going bonkers right now. But part of that is getting streamers, and part of that is word of mouth, and part of that is just it's a high quality output. But I mean, it's tens of millions of dollars of high quality output.
AAA games don't really have a discovery problem. They may have a retention problem, which could be a whole other topic.
Yes.
They don't have a discovery problem. They can just throw money at that problem.
Agree.
So then how does the rest of the normal human world approach discoverability?
Right.
And there's two endpoints, like you said. There's consumers and there's developers. Consumers want to discover and developers want to get discovered.
Yeah.
And the issues start to come into people want to discover, but not everyone wants to go on an adventure to discover everything. Mm-hmm. They really actually want to be excitedly told that something is going to be what they love and it be right. That's what that's what people most want. People most want to have someone or something effusively tell them that they're going to love this and then to love it.
Right. And so that's an interesting thing, because I think we need to put a little context on the word discovery. Because like if you just say discoverability, it brings up this idea of exploration. And that's not actually what people want. People don't necessarily want to browse through like Blockbuster looking for lots of interesting titles. It was generally, when you went to Blockbuster, you would be like, yeah, I don't know, something kind of action. You're muscly guys.
Let's look at Blockbuster.
Yeah.
As like, what is people's fantasy about Blockbuster? Like, watch old movies, right? People's fantasy about or the record store, bunch of record store movies, right?
Sure.
Is you go into the store and a hot guy or girl, whatever your preference is, tells you you're going to love this thing you've never heard of before, and you take it home and it's amazing, and you go back and you connect with them, and then you've got a circle of friends, a whole bunch of their friends are now your friends, and you all like the same movies or records or whatever. Right. That's what people really want.
Yeah, they want the whole experience. Yeah,
that is what people are trying to. That's the fantasy people are trying to fulfill with online game discovery as well. People are on platforms like Roblox and Minecraft not because they're the greatest singular games of all time. They're fun and they're expansive and they let you build, which is an important part of those things. But they're also a community. Yeah, my 10-year-old has a group of friends at school, but their school is far from our house. They go to a magnet type school.
Yeah.
But none of their friends live in the same neighborhood. So when I was a kid, we just went out into the yard and all of our friends were there because they all lived in the same neighborhood and you played. My kid
or you rode your bike
online.
Yeah.
And all of their friends from school play Roblox with them.
Right.
And they're all in Roblox and they're all chatting. Or they're in a game like they were playing Brawl Stars for a while, and they were all FaceTiming at the same time that they were playing Brawl Stars.
Yeah.
Now they're all in Forsaken, and they're chatting, Roblox chatting while they're in Forsaken. But whatever it may be, they are socializing in the game.
So that is an interesting angle, because on paper, when you first start to draw out what this problem looks like, or Miro, the new equivalent of paper, it's like you have a tendency to want to solve for one user. But I think there's something to be said of looking at, how do I solve this for you and your friends? Because I think there's important data there. Or how do I solve this for a community, right? So discoverability for like blocks of people, as opposed to, it's kind of the same. It's not marketing cohorts. It's different.
It's different. And so this actually goes to defining your audience and scoping. And I think actually a fair amount.
Yeah.
There's also just too many games. Let's just put that out there. But within the world of the problem of discoverability in and of itself, not just saturation, but like if there wasn't hyper saturation that you have to deal with, and you have to deal with it by finding ways to break through, and that means being unique, finding the right community, doing things that pop,
Yes.
all of which are hard, all of which are not easy, and not necessarily what devs want to be doing, but they are necessary in a saturated market. But stepping back a notch, defining your audience and scoping accordingly, to be discovered, the people must be there to discover you.
Yes.
If you are trying to make 1980s style Avalon Hill war games, you best not be doing that with a $500 million budget.
Right.
And you can't expect everyone on planet Earth to want to play your Avalon Hill style 100-hour
Right.
incredibly detailed war game.
Advanced
That's just
squad
not a real
leader.
market.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're not failing discovery. You may have discovered literally every person on Earth who wants to play that game successfully. Right. There just aren't that many of them. And so I think part of the discovery problem is defining an audience that's actually there.
Sure, and also big enough to sustain production costs. Right?
Exactly. And if you want to make your Avalon Hill style war game, you just got to make it for the price where those probably 100,000 people worldwide can sustain it.
So here's a different, and you're really coming on where like a lot of my sort of theory on this is headed, which is like when we say solve discoverability, it's really easy to start thinking about search engine stuff, right? And you think about one existing customer versus like, you know, an inundated pipeline of games, whereas like what you and I are actually talking about is different. It's actually pre-launch. It's identifying, you know, people that will like a thing, whatever that thing is, ahead of time, and then engaging that community early, often, and also figuring out a way to synthesize what they're telling you to the idea that you want to bring to life. And so it's totally different than like when I say discoverability, it's really easy to think like, oh, a way to deliver products to people in a fashion that, you know, it has that magic of it's like a robot had word of mouth, right? But that problem is a different problem. That I run into it all the time as a solo gamer. Like, what do I want to play tonight? And then it's explorative. The thing is like I can find the games that I want to try to explore if I just put in a couple of tags, like roguelike, space, within the last 3 months, and it, like I'll get a return of stuff to look at, and I can filter that down. Those filters. I don't want a robot to put those things on for me at any singular time. It's too late, right? What I need is some way to discover projects that are in flight that I can emotionally get behind and go, hey, there's 2 people here working on a thing. That's exciting, right? Like, hey, I fully endorse this. I don't have a lot to give you right now, but here's $1 to get you on your way, right? Or
totally.
If you finish, I'll buy it.
Totally. And it's you have to avoid falling into the trap of design by committee, because then you're going to make a terrible game.
Sure.
But your audience does want to be asked what they're interested in.
Right. You know, one game that defies the simplicity thing for me is XCOM. Like when XCOM came out, I didn't know that I wanted to play it. Somebody gave it to me, said it was good. And I've probably failed 6 times in a row trying to play it. Like also it was pirated and I had no manual, but yeah, I had to kind of figure it out. And I was like this just doesn't make any sense to me, but I persevered through it. And it ended up being one of the most like rewarding things I'd ever done. And the point that I'm kind of getting to is also a whole part of this equation is not necessarily serving up what I want exactly at that moment, but serving up the potential for like a big satisfying reward in some ways, right? Something that's really rewarding.
Totally. But also it's interesting. XCOM is a great example for you because you are, as a game designer, you like games that reward perseverance and challenge.
Right.
Not everyone does.
Sure.
And XCOM is a highly revered game.
Yes.
Among game industry people.
Yes.
And XCOM is not one of the best-selling games of all time.
Right.
But it's sold quite a lot for what it is, and because it's very good, and because they didn't go and budget for something to sell 100 million copies or even 10 when it was going to sell 1 or 2, and or you know, and and if you think that you might be able to sell one or two, you want to scope for 500K, right? Not
Yeah.
two. We might sell two, so we're gonna scope for two.
Right.
That's not the path to success. But yeah, it's interesting because it was you discovered XCOM the way many people have discovered XCOM, which is your hardcore friends, whether they're industry people or hardcore gamers, are like, this is the bomb, and you got to stick it out because it's going to be totally worth it. And if you're that kind of player, it is.
Yeah. By the way, one of the first times that I ever felt real sadness in a video game was XCOM, because you get attached to those little dudes. Like you get really attached to your squad, and it sort of had the same effect on me that I'm sure like a dying sim has in Sims 4, right? Like I had
Totally.
I had a very parasocial relationship with this like bitmap people. So anyway, okay, so discoverability, just to sum it up, is basically the future of discoverability is irrelevant to the tools. We can use AI to help fix it. We can use it that's fine. But actually, you and I have defined an interesting target, or at least a space to start discussing, which is it's pre-market. It's not finding individuals, it's finding communities. And then it's producing the correct data for a development person to then build the right game for that community. And maybe the game exists first and you have to go find that community, or it could also be like, whatever, like a teeter-totter. Like it could start on either side of that equation, but the tools for that don't really exist. You kind of have to brute force, because marketing tools find spending cohorts, not contextual topic cohorts. And so it might be Reddit is closer than anything else, but I think there's an interesting problem to solve here, which is like, hey, how do we either build or find communities to then produce games for that community? And like, I think they could exist on Discord, they could exist on Reddit, but they're definitely not in one place. I can't just put like a Google survey out and find them.
Oh yeah, totally. And I mean, people don't like surveys anyway. Right?
Yeah,
people don't want to be focus groups. That's not
yes.
Not
Yeah.
They want you to listen to them, right? Like,
and surveys don't prove traction.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I'll go back to Roblox. Horror survival games are super hot on Roblox.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know that if you didn't have some participation in that community or have kids that do, because you would look at Roblox from the outside and be like, it's Tinker Toys for kiddies, and they're all having, happy tea party games and unicorn riding or whatever. Like totally. I, as a cynical adult dev, pretend that's what children are into. But the people who are a part of that community are out there making things like Dandy's World and Forsaken that are tearing it up with the kids for the scope that they are. They're not they're not GTA 5,
right?
But they're doing all right, and it's because they are identifying what people are interested in and then building a game, as opposed to being like, why is no one playing my roguelike FPS Dungeon Explorer?
Right.
Like, I don't know. Did you go find people who want one?
Right. Well,
did you prove they exist before you built it?
So I think, and selfishly, the problem I want to solve is, how do older game devs like you and me find communities that we can serve? Because like, I have to tell you, I thought about UEFN and Roblox as an individual thing, and I was like, oh, I gotta learn another engine. I've been learning engines for 30 plus years. Like, one more? Oh, they're not even that great. Like this is going to be a lot of work.
So they're not that great, but they don't need to be.
They don't need to be. They really don't. And so part of that equation, though, is like, I want to make a 4-player Airwolf multiplayer game for Fortnite, where you get in that ball helicopter and it's basically combat, but with those ball helicopters, and everybody gets a mesa, and it just plays the Airwolf theme every time you take off. Like, but the thing is, there's no audience for that. I think, well, okay, there is, but it would be all 48-year-old plus Fortnite players, and I think there's 6 of us.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Or 7 of us. And so it wouldn't get the traction, but it would be fun for me to make. And so we're at a crossroads for me, which is like, all right, I got to find the stuff that I want to make that can adapt to a community. Now I need to go find the community. It's a lot of work to find communities. And I think the tool that I would request or ask for is some way to solve problem one, find those communities, and then two, even if it's a method, it doesn't have to be like a search. It could be like, hey, this is the actual step-by-step to find them. And then the other one is like, then step two, which is how do I engage that community in the right way to then bring them into whatever the vision of the stuff that I want to build.
So I'm going to suppose now we are talking about solo or small dev teams that don't have really any budget, right? Because there's also even a Cult of the Lamb level of budget where you got to have some money to do stuff that they're doing. But below that, like the starting point, like what can the starting point be? I think one of the things that to look at is, and this does happen in the gaming community, but usually with younger people now, but starting in our age group, you had things like, how did Twilight come about? Someone was enmeshed in a fandom,
right,
and they started creating for their fellow fandom,
right,
and they were standout amongst their fellow fans. Like they and the way they found that community was they went where they were interested.
Yeah.
And so like go play other games like what you want to make and find out who's playing them. What are they missing? What do they wish they had more of? What do they wish they had less of? Like there's a whole bunch of survival horror players on Roblox right now. What survival horror game hasn't been ripped off on Roblox yet? Because a lot, like Forsaken is Dead by Daylight and so on. Like there's a lot of mechanic recycling going on, which has been going on for a long time in the game industry. So don't look down at those guys.
Nope.
You know, like, is there something that clicks with you in a genre that you love that the players are clamoring for? Well, go build it.
Yep.
Right? Like if you're a solo dev, the other way is if you really love some specific thing. Vampire Survivors. Luca built it in public because he was just going to build that game.
Yep.
Like he was just he wanted to build it. Like he's making it for himself basically.
Right.
And having a good time and sharing that with people, and they got into it.
Right.
Is that going to happen with 99% of projects like that? No. But it can, and it is an authentic way of doing it, of being like, I'm obsessed with making this thing. All of you who would like one of these, come hang out and be a part of this process. Is a way to engage with the community, and you let them know by going places where they are and inviting them into your place, right? Like, so you wouldn't necessarily go to the Grow a Garden community to advertise the next Vampire Survivors.
Right. Well, unless you did Vampire Survivors in the PVZ universe.
But you participate. I mean, the best way to find community is to participate. If you're thinking like a marketer, then you're going to be like, how do I buy my way in? And people are pretty resistant to you buying your way in at this point.
No, absolutely. And people gatekeep. So, all right, we're about out of time. I think you should come back on and we should start talking about like some of these methods, and maybe we even build a tool or a set of tools or something to start sparking the ideas around those tools. And it's not necessarily that you and I build them, but it's basically like what will we build for ourselves, right? What are those things, and how do we make that time efficient and cheap so that I can build, Blind Samurai Fishing and find an audience that loves, Minesweeper, Fruit Ninja, and Cooking Mama, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to come back on and talk about it. And like those people are out there. And one of the things I was going to say earlier that I'll end with, which is you should be building the games as a dev that are interesting to you, but using this discovery marketing to find out that there are people there who want it and how many, so you can scope sanely. But you should build what you want, because if you look at the best-selling games of all time, none of them appeal to everyone.
Yes, totally. And with the exceptions of things like Mario and Zelda or whatever, which are like weird universal sort of.
They've become universal, but
Mario came out. I remember
specific.
When Mario 64 came out, I remember the amount of Sonic like lovers that hated it. They were like, no, whatever. Like there was a bifurcation of the audience. So, okay. Yes, come back on. Let's wrap it up. I think One last thing that I took from what you were saying that's super interesting is that there is a mental switch to flip as a dev, because a lot of times you approach making a game, and this goes with the build it and they will come category of like, you have to decrease the distance between you and the audience. And in fact, instead of approaching it from a how do I make money on this standpoint, it's really how do I find my people, right?
I mean,
how do I find my people I have fun doing what I'm doing? Things that you are enjoy plus things that I are enjoy is basically the formula we're coming around to. So, okay, thank you, Stephan. Come back relatively soon, just because I think it's fresh in our brains, and then let's start talking about like what are the tools for this discoverability, and then maybe you and I can do a little bit of pre-research on like I'm going to go try and find a couple of communities, and we'll figure it out.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, man. Brain Arcade is a Princess Hermit production, produced by Kyrene Kim, music and mixing by Jonathan Ontiveros. The podcast is hosted by me, Chris Cross. You can find me and my other endeavors at coffeewithcross.com.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Electricast. Welcome to the Candle Power Hour. Come with us backstage behind the scenes of show business spanning over 4 decades and bringing you the experiences that can only be told by the people who were there.
Our guests are from the A-list, the F-list, and everyone in between. Get set for some of the most insane, hilarious, and inspiring stories you will ever hear.
I'm Mercury.
And I'm Diego.
Your hosts for the Candle Power Hour.